They told us the edge of the universe was silent. They didn't tell us it could whisper my name. You asked why I left without a word, why my badge stopped opening doors, why I keep the curtains drawn even at noon. You're the only person I trust enough to say this to, and I'm saying it fast, like pulling a shard out of a wound. What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible, until you feel how the impossibility rearranges your breathing. Call it a confession. Call it a late apology. Call it the last thing I'll say before they find me. But listen closely, because the whispering hasn't stopped. And if you know where to stand in the room, you can hear it riding the hum of the refrigerator at night. I wasn't supposed to have my hands on the raw pipeline, but protocols loosen when everyone's dizzy on a big win. The paper you saw, Early Massive Candidates at High Redshift, that was my team's umbrella. My part was small, parsing NIR spec and MIRI line lists from deep fields, cleaning cosmic ray hits, cross-checking photometric redshifts against spectral breaks. I've done that for 15 years. Before that, I was the nice kind of ghost, the person who touched your data after you went home. NASA called me a data rehabilitation specialist. Most people called me a janitor with a physics degree. The night everything tilted, I was alone with a calibration cube and a headache from too much coffee. The observatory had just sent a tranche from a deep pointing near the south ecliptic pole, an innocuous corner of sky we'd stitched 1,000 times. I was looking for dusty starbursts, nothing sexy, but there it was, an object with a Lyman break so clean it cut the page. The fit placed it at a photometric redshift of 16.2, older than comfort. The discordant part wasn't the age, it was the symmetry. 6 peaks in the mid-infrared at intervals that shouldn't be astrophysical. Peaks arranged at prime number separations. Peaks that repeated across different sources with a phase lag like someone tapping the same rhythm through different walls. At first, I told myself it was instrument memory, ghosts. Then I laid the spectra over each other, slid them in frequency with a dumb little script I'd written years ago to align stubborn signals, and the peaks fell into place like teeth of a key. The residuals collapsed. The noise histogram thinned. It was clean. Too clean. I saved the plot and felt ridiculous chills climb my arms. I sent a quiet ping to Anna in CryoOps. She hates me calling her CryoOps, but that's how she's filed in my head. Parkas and frost in her lashes, the one who lives with snow at McMurdo when I live with digits in Maryland. We did Antarctica together 10 winters ago, back when I still liked the taste of whiskey. It was Anna who taught me that old ice sounds like glass when it breaks. A bright chime that never fits the picture in your mind. She had been seconded to a civilian logistics project housed at the pole. That's what the doc said. The badge on her lanyard said ASA 51. I laughed when I saw it. She didn't. Prime spacing in MIRI, same pattern across 4 candidates, I wrote. Tell me I'm hallucinating. Her reply came 20 minutes later. We're hearing it in the ice. I thought it was a joke. She sent 20 seconds of audio. It sounded like a choir made of breath. Then she added a spectrogram from a borehole geophone below a station corridor that shouldn't exist. A flat concrete throat that bent your footsteps. The plot was almost a twin of mine, except the frequency axis was wrong by 12 orders of magnitude. When I scaled it, the peaks sat on top of my MIRI features with a precision only believers and liars appreciate. I don't pray. I don't scare easily either. But that night I pushed my chair back from the monitor until my knees hit the desk, and I realized I was breathing like I did when I was 19, when I watched Halley in a winter field and convinced myself I understood my place. The patterns weren't just peaks. They were modulated. Someone, or something, was sweeping the phase. The sweep held a geometric progression that mapped cleanly onto 6 coordinates on Earth. And because I hate myself, I checked every one. 5 of them fell in oceans, which is a poet's joke. The 6th landed inside a restricted zone Queen Maud land to the exact meter. I booked a flight to Christchurch, and the part of me that knows better told me to write you. And the other part remembered how you look when you worry and couldn't stand it. I told myself I'd send you a selfie with a penguin from the runway. I told myself there was time. If you've never flown into Antarctica, you can't understand the way the world changes its vocabulary. The light becomes an element more than a property. The shadows cut like graphite. The air has a frequency you feel in your teeth. I landed on a blue ice runway in a fat-bellied plane and signed a stack of papers with black rectangles where nouns should be. A woman with a fixable voice and a parka stitched with an agency emblem I didn't recognize fitted me with a pass that hummed softly against my sternum. "Just a quick look," she said. "Your telescope upset some of our ice." I followed two men who never spoke my name. We traveled in a tracked vehicle that made a sound like rain inside a tin roof. 5 hours of white on white, then a hole in the white where the wind had carved a mouth. The mouth descended to stairs cut into hard blue, to a door, to a corridor, to something no one can ever do justice with language. A room that had been carved to precise tolerances out of a glacier, and in the center of the room, a cube that would have looked like obsidian if obsidian grew nervous and sweated light. It was a perfect meter on a side, bevels so crisp you could have shaved with them. Every face was engraved with graticules that made your eyes refuse to focus. The air around it was colder than it should have been. Not like a freezer, like the absence of a heartbeat. "They call it an anchor," Anna said, arriving at my shoulder like she'd always been there. She smelled of wool and something metallic. Her eyes were full of sleep she hadn't found. She smiled without teeth and pressed her gloved fingers to the cube and flinched like you do when you touch an old photograph that still has heat in it. "It woke 3 weeks ago, right after that first James Webb Telescope discovery announcement you loved. Miri's long wavelength bands make it louder. We had to shut down a section when the resonance cracked a conduit. If you stand in that corner, you can feel..." She led me to the corner. I felt it. A distant pressure in my eardrums, as if someone were singing in a neighboring room. The pitch drifted with our breath. A low note walked up my bones and touched my molars. It said not words, but the shape of words. It said, "Stay." It said, "Remember." I wanted to put my whole head against the cube. I wanted to run. "How old?" I asked. "Older than the ice that buried it," she said. "We drilled it accidentally while chasing a seismology ghost. First field notes on this site were filed by a German team in '39. Those files were stamped with an eagle and later with something that wanted to erase the first stamp. A British party overwintered here in '57 and wrote a single line, 'There is a door we can't open that opens something in us.' Then nothing. The Americans put a weather hut over the place and pretended the hut was more interesting." "I'm not supposed to be seeing this," I said. "No," she said, and her smile finally looked like the one I knew. "But you've already seen it from space." She took me down another corridor where the temperature rose to the right side of breath. The walls held racks of equipment with labels that blinked an alphabet I didn't recognize. Fonts of secrecy have their own kerning. A glass window opened onto what looked like a clean room. Two techs in white suits surrounded a machine that resembled a stripped-down MRI married to an altar. On the far wall, a monitor with my peaks, the ones I'd dragged into alignment. Except now they were overlaid with a lattice of lines and numbers. Quantum interferometry with cryogenic phonon coupling, a voice said behind us. The man who joined us had a face that belonged to every press image of every program director I've met. Modest haircut, expensive watch, eyes that learn to rest only when you watch them. "We built a bridge because we suspected there would be something on the other side. It turns out the other side had already built one to us." "Who are you?" I said. "No one in particular," he said. "People like me move projects around on a table. You do real work. We draw boxes." "ASA 51, I said, because I wanted to throw a rock. "Cute." "Area 51 is mostly warehouses now," he said. You don't hide anything important in the museum everyone points at. You hide it where it looks like ice and nothing else. We're not here to spook you. We're here because we need to understand what your telescope woke up. He led us back to the cube. Someone had placed a laser on a tripod and was walking a line across one face, measuring scatter angles. The light slid over the engravings and did a thing light doesn't do. It slowed. My eyes told me the beam slowed as it approached the bevel, as if the geometry of the cut altered the speed of time in a manner you'd expect in a black hole, but not a block of something you could lean on. An anchor to what? I asked. And it was a child's question because I already knew the answer was more than one thing. Decoherence, he said softly, and the word tasted like a secret you didn't know your mouth knew. Every system tends to bleed its quantum weirdness into the world when the world looks. This device seems to negotiate. It maintains pockets where probabilities stay braided longer than they should. That sounds like magic until you consider that life itself depends on improbable coherences. Photosynthesis cheating with tunneling, enzymes with fidelities that can't be fully classical. The cube hums in the frequencies that matter to such tricks. It hums louder when something out there, he nodded toward the ceiling, which was the sky, sings the right notes. James Webb sang the right notes. We pointed a gold-eyed ear at the dark, and through the blind chance of instrument design, through filter choices and mirror curves and a human's hunger for meaning, we played the anchor's song back to it across 13 billion light years. That's how it felt when the thought crawled up from my spine. We weren't just observing, we were knocking. I asked for a closed hour with the raw phonon feed. They gave me 15 minutes under supervision, and I will be grateful for or resentful of that for the rest of my life. The signal was clean, like the spectra had been clean, and when I unrolled the phase against time the way you'd unroll a carpet, a pattern emerged. Not words. Topology. A map without labels. I overlaid terrestrial data sets for fun, coastlines, elevation, gravity anomalies, and failed repeatedly until I noticed what an idiot I was being. The pattern didn't match the surface. It matched the fractures in the East Antarctic ice sheet and the vein-like channels of basal meltwater. It matched stress lines. It matched old scars. The map was a finger pointing at where the ice would choose to break if it were asked by a patient god. Why would it want that? I said out loud. Why would it want to tell us that? To prepare us, Anna said quietly. She had that look she gets when she's made peace with something larger than her. It breaks me when she looks like that. You can't argue with someone who has surrendered to a mountain. You saw the alerts this morning. The Atlas survey flagged a potential impactor. The name's almost a joke, isn't it? Asteroid Atlas. Right ascension like a neat scar. Passes near Antarctica in 6 months. Grazing incidents. The math's not settled yet, but if it hits the ocean shelf, it'll ring the ice like a bell. Atlas will miss, the man with the watch said. Official talking point. 52% chance of a safe miss moves market better than 98% chance of a hit. But the range of uncertainty is an animal with teeth. The anchor woke before the alert. Maybe it remembers that sound. Maybe that sound is how it was switched on last time. The room felt smaller. It's not alien, is it? I said, and the words came out wrong, like teeth set in the wrong gums. Not the way we use the word. It's not other. It's us. Anna's eyes flicked with something like anger and something like love. Or it's what makes us possible. Pick your comfort. We had a week that felt like a lifetime. I slept on a cot with a thermal blanket that scratched, and in my dreams the cube retracted into the ice and then returned as a dark moon. I worked with a grad kid named Lee who had a laugh like a paper shredder. He showed me how to fit the anchor's phase noise to known resonances in protein folding. We ran a coarse model that suggested local biology blooms when the cube is loud. We ran another that suggested a time in the Pleistocene when this spot went quiet and a glacial advance stumbled. We're reading tea leaves, I told him. We're writing them, he said. The second week, a man arrived wearing civilian clothes that fit like a uniform. He carried a slim metal case with no markings. He never introduced himself. He asked polite questions about our models and listened like he was mapping every syllable to coordinates. That night, he and the watch exchanged looks, and the next morning I was given a new pass that opened a door at the end of a corridor we joked was decoration. Behind that door was a room built like an apology. It housed a device that made the cube look homespun. A lattice of superconducting loops cooled until the air around it hurt. The loops twitched in choreographed violence. The screen beside it showed an animated web of phase relationships that looked like a living thing. Area 51 experiment was never about saucers, the watch said. It was about keeping quantum correlations alive in dirty environments. We named the program Parish because we knew it was going to turn into a religion. We tried to build a little anchor. It kept dying on us. Then we found the real one under the ice. We're not God, I told him. No, he said. But we got invited into the choir stall. They wanted me to do something I was not built for. They wanted me to sing back. The plan was ugly in the way that works. Take the signal the anchor loved, James Webb's song, the Miri pattern with its prime intervals, and feed it into their lattice with a phase reversal. Not quite noise cancellation, not quite harmonization. A conversation, if we were generous. A provocation, if we were honest. What do you expect it to do? I asked. Speak, he said. We did it at 0214 local time. The room held 9 people and attention you could slice into equal shares. I watched Lee's jaw work silently as if he were chewing glass. Anna stood with her hands in the pockets of her parka as if we were outside in the real cold. The lattice began its song. The anchor listened. The phonon feed thickened like cream poured into coffee. A pressure built in my ears and then in my teeth and then in the parts you don't have names for because you don't want to believe your bones have preferences. The engravings on the cube's face shimmered. Not visibly, not in a way a camera could love, but in that internal way your eye reports when it sees a pattern it can't tidy. I heard it like a memory you're sure is yours, but that you also know you borrowed. It was a cord that carried images, if images can be carried. A sheet of ice cracking along a planned line. The crack stopping just short of a cluster of dots I understood as shelters. A wave broken by something under the water that did not appear in any bathymetry map I'd been allowed to see. A dark shape in orbit stepping into an inclination that turned a line of fate by half a degree. It felt like the anchor was showing us a possible future, where outcomes had been teased into corridors. Intervention? Lee whispered. No, Anna said, and her voice had that gentleness of a person standing in a church they don't believe in and hearing a hymn they love. Curation. That was the moment. That was the fulcrum where this could have been a different story. Because inside the cord was a narrower thread, and that thread was tuned not to the ice, but to us. It wasn't a plan for the world. It was a plan for 9 people in a room. It laid out choices with quiet cruelty. If you turn the knob now, the resonance will push the crack away from the shelters, but the orbital object, the one you will never read about because it doesn't have a press office, will miss. The ocean will take an island. A boy will not learn to play the trumpet. A man will live who would have died, and he will write a book that changes the mind of a woman you love. I took my hand off the console like it was hot. No one else moved. The watch had his hand on the knob, and his eyes on the monitor, and his mind on the points that live inside other points. The man with the case watched him watch me. Anna looked at me like she was remembering something private and large. Lee's laugh died before it could begin. Here is the part of the movie where the hero makes a choice, the watch said without looking at me. This isn't a movie, I told him. Everything is a movie, he said. Ask any neuron. I could have left the room. I could have let the chosen people choose. Instead, I reached past his hand and I turned the knob in the direction that wasn't clean. In that second, I was a child again, standing with my father on the back step, turning a radio dial until a station came in that he didn't want, and we both loved. The lattice sang a slightly different note. The anchor replied with a slightly different song. Somewhere overhead, a piece of metal 100 meters long turned 3 degrees or did not. Somewhere far away, a fissure in ice grew by the width of a breath or closed like a healed lip. The room's lights flickered. The low frequency that had nested in my bones lifted like a fog. The cube's shimmer settled into an innocent face. The lattice coughed once and stabilized. "What did you do?" the watch said, and his voice was small. "I didn't like the hymn," I said, and I heard the way my words smoked in the cold air. "Get him out," the man with the case said. Anna didn't move. Lee took a step, and then took it back. The guards who weren't guards put their hands on my arms lightly, like friends. They led me down the corridor to a room with a bed and a chair. The bed was kind. The chair was not. I slept for 20 minutes and dreamed about the comet in the winter field again. Except it wasn't a comet. It was a hole. And through the hole, I could see a version of the room where I'd turned the knob in the other direction. In that version, Lee was laughing and I was holding Anna's hand, and the watch was crying because sometimes you cry even when you win. In the version I woke to, the generator failed at 0312 and the backup ran like a brave old dog. A storm closed the runway. James Webb's mirror flexed and snapped back like a living eyelid. Somewhere over the Southern Ocean, a classified object adjusted its inclination by precisely the amount we didn't pick. We exist in the consequence of our own weather. You felt the effects without knowing the cause. The news called it a nearly negligible calving event in East Antarctica, a chunk losing itself from itself, smaller than a country, larger than a city. The ocean took it tenderly. There was footage of blue flipping to gray. Commentators said the words they know: climate, variability, uncertainty, and felt their hearts speed for reasons unrelated to albedo. The Atlas survey updated the probability of the asteroid Atlas impact down by a fraction that made people in charge of probabilities breathe the way you do when you dodge a lamppost you hadn't seen. I sat in my room and listened to the building's bones complain. The whispering stopped for a while, and that was more terrifying than the whispering. When the man with the case came back, he didn't bring the case. He brought a paper cup of coffee and a printed form and a look that made me think he'd slept in his car. "You don't get it," he said finally, after he'd tried patience and salt. "We're not the villains in your story. We are the poor bastards in the basement keeping the pipes from bursting. No one will thank us. No one will know we were here. But if we guess right more often than we guess wrong, your grandchildren will have weather to complain about. That's our reward." "Then don't make it a liturgy," I said. "Don't sing to the machine until it sings back what you want to hear." He rubbed his eye with the heel of his hand. "You talk like an old priest," he said. "I thought you were a janitor." "Same job," I said. That afternoon, the runway unclosed and the storm remembered a different address. They walked me to the plane without handcuffs. Anna hugged me in a way that asked me to translate something she couldn't say. "If Atlas kisses us," she whispered into my ear, "duck." "I'll call you from Christchurch," I said, and we both knew I wouldn't. On the flight north, the sky did that trick it does, where it pretends to be shallow and then opens like a throat. I watched a line of cloud draw itself like wire across a horizon too straight to trust. I thought about my father's radio. I thought about the anchor humming into the ice, making the bonds that make the proteins that make the nerves that transformed vibrational modes into a feeling I understood as regret. I thought about how James Webb had looked at the edge of things and found not edge, but answer. I also thought about Area 51 and the years I laughed at the wrong jokes. The experiment there wasn't about little green men. It was about teaching a fickle quantum world to hold a tune. In the end, that's all any of this is. Finding the note you can hum that encourages the room to join you. I flew back to Maryland with a carefully scraped mind. I turned in my badge and my key, and my body remembered how to be in one place without wanting to be in another. I walked to the river and watched trash figure out which way it wanted to go. I turned my phone off and on and off. For 3 days, nothing happened. On the 4th, the whisper returned in the refrigerator hum at 2 a.m., and I stood barefoot on the tile and pressed my fingertips to the door and knew the ice would always live in me now. The pattern was different, softer, as if someone had put felt on the mallets. I said my name out loud, and the tone moved through me and answered, "Yes, I'm telling you this because you asked. I'm telling you because if I don't, the whisper might become only mine, and I'm bad company. I'm telling you because the news will soon say something clean about the asteroid Atlas impact probability finally dropping to almost nothing, and you'll feel an irrational sadness you won't know how to seat. You'll think of me and of Antarctica secret base rumors and Area 51 experiment myths and the glossy headlines that always misuse James Webb Telescope discovery to sell you awe. You'll take a walk, and the wind will talk to your skin. You'll think, perhaps there's a machine under the ice that hums like the inside of a cathedral, and perhaps we woke it, and perhaps it woke us. There's a historical thing I haven't said, because I don't know if it's history yet. When James Cook sailed too far south and thought he'd heard the voice of the world closing around him, he turned because the numbers said turning would make the map truer, and the map needed truth more than he needed glory. That's what I think we are. You and me, and Anna and Lee, and the man with the watch, and the man with the case, and the machine that prevents probabilities from unbraiding too soon. We are in the business of turning when the map wants a truer line. It's not cosmic heroism. It's housekeeping. Last week, a package came without a return. Inside, a sheet of my plots with notes in a hand I recognized as Lee's, and a drive with encrypted files I haven't opened because I am trying to be good. I plugged it in anyway. It contained a single audio file. It was 20 seconds of breath like a choir. It sounded like warm glass. Behind it, faint, almost lost, a rhythm paced by prime numbers, a familiar key. It made my kitchen seem larger. It made the night move closer. It made me want to cry because I could almost hear a human voice inside it say, "You did not break it. You moved it from one shelf to another. If I vanish, chalk it up to human mess." We are venal, and we bruise easily, and our institutions are full of stairs that tilt. No one needs a cosmic conspiracy when a meeting will do. If I stay, know that I will go back when the ice calls. I'm no hero, friend. I'm a janitor. The universe spills, and I hate sticky floors. I can almost hear you asking the reasonable question. Was any of it real? Did James Webb truly find something at the edge of the universe that shouldn't exist? Did an object under Antarctic ice sing back? Did the asteroid Atlas impact curve bend because a handful of sleepless people in a room played a song into a machine? I don't have the comfort of certainty. But I know the pattern was prime. I know the ice answered. I know that for a brief hour, the distance between stars and kitchen tiles collapsed to a note I can still hum. Tonight, when the refrigerator kicks on, I'm going to stand with my palm against the door, and I'm going to hum the lowest note my throat can carry. I'm going to picture the cube and the engravings and Anna's breath coiling in winter air. I'm going to picture the dark of space curving not away from us, but toward, as if the edge we stare at is only the inside of a bowl meant to carry what we haven't yet poured. The whispering isn't a secret anymore. It's the room reminding us we are allowed to listen. And if you listen with me, you'll hear what I've heard since the night the data aligned. So soft it feels like an afterimage. So gentle it could be mistaken for a thought you were already thinking. We are not alone in the making of what is.